Hi, I'm Gene Cavassis.
Hi, I'm Dylan Cavassis.
And in today's episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to build
the super shotgun from Doom Eternal.
Okay, well, let's get started. I always like to start out by sketching out what we're going to be doing. Now, we used a couple of reference photos to get the idea, but the whole gun was basically just done by freehanding or roughing out the design. After that, I cut the pattern out.
Okay, so this piece and this piece will be two separate pieces.
Yes. Now I want to use some scrap wood. I have a piece of poplar left over from a guitar that I built, and this is really good wood. Now we're going to have to get clever with where it fits. So like this, we're probably, and I want to keep it as close up as we can, and then this we're probably going to want, because that's got a little curve, but that's going to get rounded anyway.
Okay.
So this could go on right here. So using some spray adhesive, we dust the cutout piece. It's going to get curved anyway, right?
Right.
Perfect.
All right.
That's perfect. So I think you're now ready to cut these out.
Here I'm using the bandsaw and following along the pattern to cut out the basic shape of the stock.
I'm going to come in and mark the inside cuts of this, so that will help us create the breech, or the hinge in that stock.
I think we spent more time on this gun just making the breech mechanism.
Yeah, that took a lot of work and a lot of thought on how to get that just right to make it to where it would line up and even, open up properly. Taking it to the drill press. Let's line this thing up, see if it works.
I think that looks pretty good. Next, we're going to take the stock and we're going to take it over to the belt sander to give it more of a rounded feel.
While he's working on the shape of the stock, I used a rasp and started working through the pistol grip. This takes a little more time, but it's worth it.
Sanding in and of itself is actually pretty tedious, but like Dad said, it's well worth the investment you put into it.
Okay, now that we've got the basic stock assembly done, so we're going to use a piece of this 3/4 inch pipe. So you're thinking something about like it cranks open.
Yeah.
It has to be able to, and you've got to have those shotgun shells fit in there too.
Right. And we made sure of that. So.
Yeah. So I think you're good like that.
Yeah.
So you think 15?
Actually, yeah, 15 will do.
15? All
yeah.
right. We can always
shorten
it again. But all right. So there's our mark.
Okay.
So now we're going to need to cut 2 of these.
Yep. So we take the PVC over to a vise, and I use a coping saw to saw off the ends. Then we're going to go back to the bandsaw, and we're going to cut off the remnants that's left.
Here you want to measure out the length that's going to go through the center to hold the 2 barrels together. A little sanding, and now we're going to use some clear PVC cement to start sticking down the 2 barrels between this centerpiece that we cut. Like that. Hold it together. You got that? Trying not to get too pungent on here.
But even worse.
Huh? Off there for a minute, and let's let that dry up. Okay, so now...
This isn't too much goop, is it?
It's a lot of goop, but that's okay. So now stand them up, line them up to this edge. Now, once we have these glued up, we're going to use a couple of small clamps to hold them in place for a few minutes. After giving it a few minutes, we'll remove those clamps. And now we're ready to move on to trimming the barrel down and adding a finished end piece to the front of the barrel.
In order to create the shell underneath the barrels, we'll cut 2 half-inch wide strips of PVC with the bandsaw and glue them to the bottom of the pipes. Once the glue dries, we take it back over to the belt sander and we round it out to make the pieces look like they come together. You can't tell, but I was bopping to the Doom soundtrack while sanding.
Now we're going to trim off the end of the stock because we decided it needed some more shaping to it. So we're going to take it over to the sander, sand it down, and at that point, once it's the shape we want, we'll come back and adhere it back on. So this is an accelerator, and we're going to use this medium glue. This stuff's like super glue in bottles. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put the glue on this part. We spray the accelerator a little bit on this part.
Right.
You'll be amazed how fast it's all threaded.
Oh.
Okay, so anyway, you just put a few dots of this stuff on. Here, hold that for just a second.
Okay.
Whew. Yeah, it's also pungent. You take the accelerator and you spray on there like that. And then you just take this.
Kind of gonna line it up.
Line it up with your hands shaking. Oh wait, that's my hand shake. Squeeze them together for a second. Yep, there we go.
Yep. It's looking good. Already starting to take shape.
Yep. Heading to the drill press, we'll carefully drill 2 holes in the top of that barrel so that it can be mounted to the stock. We'll also glue 2 pieces of PVC together, and this is going to help us to create the trigger guard. Now I'm using a shape helper that will come in handy a couple times on this for getting the contour of the handle or the grip of the stock. Coming back to the bandsaw, we'll cut the basic shape of this out, get it sanded down.
One of Hell's imps got out.
I'm going to add in a magnetic catch like used for cabinets. This is going to help to hold the gun together when the barrel is closed. Adding the magnet to the other side of the handle, and that's going to work exactly the way we want it. Now looking at some photos that we've seen, I think we'll be able to set something like this up on each side, about like that, and then add a piece onto the barrel.
Okay.
I'm going to cut PVC pipe that's a little bit larger, and I'm going to start sanding and shaping and using some different pieces of PVC to create different layers and rims and edging and decorative pieces, all for the barrel of the gun. So it's just kind of a building pieces up, and like I had said, looking at some of the photos to get the idea of the design and the intricacy that's in this gun itself. This is starting to look really pretty cool. I'll add a few more rings, and the top of this barrel for the most part is done. So at this point, Dylan can get the barrel screwed down to the stock, and we can start actually looking at adding the trigger guard in, the bolt in. He can get this all screwed down. I'm going to do a little more shaping and adding some of the what would be metal components to the sides of it. And I'm going to build these up with layers of the PVC so they'll fit against the stock. using an 1.5" dowel rod, I'll cut 2 3-inch pieces. Now I'm going to use these for the back pistol grip that will help me to create that rounded look that will melt into the barrel. So we're going to have to cut these out. Now you want to be very careful anytime you're cutting round material on the bandsaw. So after cutting those, we'll come back, fit them on. I think that's going to work. Do a little trimming on this. And once again, using the medium glue from Star Bond, I'm going to adhere these to the back of the pistol grip. The accelerator will help that to dry instantly. Once I've set those on, I'll take them to the belt sander and we'll get those trimmed down. And then I'll fit in some different pieces of wood and MDF, and using the rotary sander, I'll come back and do some trimming and get that kind of filed down. Using that shape contour, I can use that to mark off the back of the grip to help create that release mechanism. This also helps to give a lot of the finish pieces to the gun. Once I have that kind of fit on, I will come back and glue it as well. I'm going to come back with some wood filler and just kind of fill these sections in, and I'll set that to the side and let it dry. We'll go ahead and mount the additional cabinet magnets onto the top of the barrel and the receiver, and that's also going to help us to make sure that this is a good, tight, and workable hinge. Using the heat gun, I'm going to heat up some of the PVC plastic around that'll help build the butt for the end of the pistol grip. We'll start installing some of these pieces. And we're going to add a couple of small bars that we could see in the photos to the bottom of the barrel. Then I come back with the rotary trimmer, kind of trim that stock down a little bit, and we're able to screw on the end cap. Drop the bolt in this. And we're now ready to start working on the meat hook. So now the meat hook, I'm just kind of going off of photos and getting an idea about how large we want that to be. And I'm going to trace that onto an 1.5" by 1/4" inch piece of PVC. I'll stack 2 of them together, so I cut both of these out at the same time because they're the same shape, just opposite. After doing that, I'm going to use an X-Acto knife just to cut some of the design elements to it, and a Forstner bit to give that hinge look to each piece. Then I'll come back with a lot of the pieces that I cut and angle them down like on a 45 or a beveled edge, including the hook itself. Taking a file, I'll put some of those meat claws that are on it, and then using the PVC clear plastic glue, I'll start kind of building up all the pieces together. Even cut a small piece that looks like the end links of the chain, and there I have it. I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. I'll kind of trim up a cradle side for where it lines up with the gun stock, and that should work out just about right. I'll set 2 screws in this, securing it down so that it is locked in tight, and I'll also use a countersink bit so that the screw is flush when it is screwed down. Yeah, that's starting to come together well. Okay, so we finished building the basic gun. Everything works well.
Oh my goodness, Dad, it's wonderful. Like this, it looks like it just like pops right out of the game. It's so cool.
Well, it's now time to tear it all back apart and start painting it.
All right.
So, this is his fun. Here we go.
Wait, what? Before we can get into the spray painting process, we'll have to disassemble the gun piece by piece. This part is kind of tedious, so we'll speed it up a little bit. A little word of advice for this part, make sure that you keep track of which screws hold in what pieces. The last thing you want is to stretch out a hole because you put the wrong screw in. Am I right, guys? Next, you'll want to take some masking tape and mask the parts that you don't want to get spray painted. Try your best to be as accurate as possible here. And now comes the fun part. When spray painting, you'll want to just simply dust the parts that you want colored, and then continuously put on a series of light coats so that the paint doesn't run. Again, you'll want to keep in mind that you want to use the masking tape to get the parts that you don't want to be colored. Alrighty, so we're going to be using chrome gold spray paint on the meathook. Let's see how this goes. Remember to use the same brand of paint on the specific pieces that you're painting, so that you don't have to worry about other brands not blending well together. And now wait a little bit. Yep. After the paint dried, I went back and used a small paintbrush to touch up on the nooks and crannies that I missed. I also chose a darker gold for the chain piece so that it stood out from the rest of the hook. We used a stain to give the wooden part of the gun that authentic wooden look, and we used gray paint for the pieces that would be metal. After all our pieces are painted, it's time to reassemble it.
Okay, so we're now going to do a wash on this to start giving it that battle wear look to it. We're going to kind of mimic what we did on the Mandalorian rifle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use some water-based, this is a satin black latex paint. I'm going to add some water into that.
Okay.
And you're going to want to be able to just kind of wash that color into it. You can come in, you can use foam brush, you can use several different things. This is going to be an interesting area, it's right through here. So you're going to take some of your color and just start kind of blobbing it in.
Like Dad said, there are all kinds of ways you can get the wash on the gun. So I used a smaller paintbrush to get to the areas that the foam brush couldn't normally reach. There's a part of us that wanted to leave the gun all shiny and nice looking, but come on, this is Doom. Shiny is not a part of the Doomslayer's vocabulary. In fact, while we were adding the heat marks to the meathook, it ended up looking more like bloodstains, but in my opinion, it just adds to the aesthetic. We sprayed a sealer on the pieces to seal the wash to the spray paint. It also gave it a cool glossy look.
Okay, so I picked up some leather lacing that we can use on that. Mm-hmm. So it looks like it needs to be kind of back and forth, almost haphazardly.
Yeah.
And then 3 nails to go in.
Yep.
Should we hot glue it to start with?
So number one, we were trying to do the wrapping process with the gun, but the leather turned out to be a lot thicker than we wanted it to, and as it turns out, when we were trying to wrap it in the jagged way that we wanted, it just looked ugly. So now we're just going to do a little clean wrap. Now what I did at the very end, I took an X-Acto knife here, and I cut, if you can look very closely right there, I cut just a little slant right at the end. And what you'll want to do
you want to take a very small Sharpie and make a little edge. And I put it right at the, oops, right at the end, right there. And that's where we'll be doing some of our glue. Okay.
After wrapping the leather around the pistol grip, we then drilled holes for the decorative nails to go into. After we put the meat hook in, we were done. Time to rip and tear.
Okay, this has been quite the project. This was a lot of fun for me to build. What did you think?
Dad, this is probably one of our best works that we've done yet. Oh my gosh, I just love all the little fine little details we have in it. This really came out to look just absolutely wicked.
If you like this video and you want to see others, click on some of the other videos to the side and consider subscribing. Meantime, I'll see you soon.
All right, Dad, let's go blow a hole into the surface of Mars.
Okay.